Today, we are going to talk about why business is personal. We're going to talk about the Amazon Web Services outage that happened this morning and midday. And then we're also going to talk about why financial advisors may not be doing their job for the next generation. This is the Will Whiten Show. So, starting with why business is personal, and that has to do with the future of this channel. It's a flippant saying that many of us have heard that it's not personal, it's just business. And if you think about the context that you've typically heard this statement before, it may be between business partners, perhaps a vendor and a customer. And it's not a warm and fuzzy feeling that you get when you hear this saying. It's not personal, it's just business, right? There's maybe some tone of some unethical behavior or some double crossing, some backstabbing that typically goes along with that. And that's why I'd argue that business is personal. If you're running a business or even just working for a business and something goes wrong like that, you feel betrayed in a certain way, it's because you're spending most of your life working away from your family. You're trying to probably get better at whatever your line of work is. And so when something goes wrong, you're going to feel bad about it. It's going to feel personal because you are personally spending most of your time doing this thing, whatever business, whatever line of work you're in. When you think about the consumer end of things, say you buy a product and it doesn't live up to the hype and the company doesn't really follow through on it, follow through on the promises that they made, or perhaps the marketing was overhyped, you feel let down. That feels personal, but you can imagine the business thinking, well, that's just business. It's marketing. That's what everyone does. Everyone tries to fluff up the product. But you've spent your money on this product and you aren't getting the value that you thought you would derive from spending your money. And after all, when you're talking about your own money, that's personal. That's where the phrase personal finance comes from. It's your money. And you've worked to earn that or save to grow it or invested to grow that. And so it feels deeply personal when your interaction with the business doesn't go right. So as far as this channel goes, we're going to try and go over some of the latest business news and try and connect it personally to how it affects us and what we can do in our lives based on what we're hearing going on based on what we're hearing that is going on in the business world. So that brings us to our first story, which is the Amazon Web Services outage. Happened earlier this morning. And let's see, Amazon Web Services from CNBC suffered a major outage early Monday. They're the leading provider of cloud infrastructure technology. So for those of you that don't know, think about all the businesses. They're running websites. They might have tools that you interact with online, services. Think about your bank and whatnot. Well, it's obviously very costly to manage the computers, these servers, to run all of these systems on, whether it be the company's own systems or the systems that you as a consumer interact with when dealing with that company. So Amazon Web Services many years ago came up with the idea of, well, we'll just maintain the servers and we will rent this space on those servers to corporate customers. And many companies love this idea because then they don't have to pay for larger IT staffs and infrastructure and data centers to manage these servers when maybe that's not really their work. If they're a bank or even something smaller like a bakery or something, what do they know about that? They can pay Amazon or Microsoft or Google, who are competitors in the space, to manage those servers with them. Well, obviously, sometimes, like today, things go wrong. Let's see, there's a list of companies that was impacted. There's a website, Down Detector, which lists reports of companies going down. Impacted companies: Disney Plus, Lyft, McDonald's, New York Times, Reddit, Ring Doorbells, Robinhood, Snapchat, United Airlines, Venmo. Quite a lot of companies. The British government websites, gov.uk, Lloyd's Banking Group. So if you're getting the sense of this, these aren't all companies in one industry. These are companies in many industries. In fact, if you do business with many of these companies, today you probably had a hard time checking your security system, reading the news, going on a blog, watching TV, ordering food, getting a ride, communicating with your friends, or accessing your bank account. So that's a bit of a problem. Now, when companies get large, they won't always just depend on one cloud service provider. So they can work with others to then help provide a backup when things like this happen. At least I would think smarter companies do, in order to have some sort of redundancy. Not all companies do, and I understand the plight of perhaps a medium-sized business which may not have the budget to stand up their own server infrastructure and may not have the budget to pay multiple cloud service providers, and so they have to temporarily rely on one until they can become a bigger company. But how many companies that are medium-sized and growing then actually decide to prioritize getting a backup cloud service provider? They're probably pursuing growth, whether it's building new locations or trying to enhance features with their product or hire more salespeople. Amazon Web Service, again, this is still from CNBC, has also experienced other outages in recent years, a disruption in 2023, a more severe one back in 2021. Last year, July of 2024, CrowdStrike had a similar issue, causing many problems for Microsoft Windows products. So it seems like most of the issue is fixed by now. This is Monday night, and the servers are back online. The service is restored for many of the companies that the article has mentioned. And that's why we're now going to bring it back to how this impacts us. And if we think about our personal life and a lot of these businesses that we rely on, obviously if you're trying to book a flight for United and it's not working, maybe you'll try and book a flight with another provider, and it's nice to have that option. It's nice not to be locked into one. Depending on where you live, you might be locked into one airline more than another. But if we take it even more to a personal level, when it comes to your personal data, where are your pictures stored? Where are your books stored? Do you have movies? Think about all this media that you have. I've heard many stories from close friends and others about how they had all their pictures on their phone, and they never did any backups to any sort of cloud service, and then they lost the phone, or the phone broke. Years of pictures of their children growing up, not backed up. I don't blame anyone for not thinking about this thing. It's hard. There's so many things in life to think about, but there's a critical dependency you have for something like your photos when you're capturing those family moments. If you're thinking about books, there was a story a while back about how Amazon was ending support for some books that were downloaded to Kindle. Those are books that you bought that are now gone. So I think this is a good reminder. This isn't to scare anyone and say that we need to get rid of all technology. Quite the opposite. I think we need to keep using technology, but be smarter about how we use technology in our daily lives. Obviously, there's not much you can do if Disney Plus goes down, unless you buy some of the Disney movie DVDs and you keep a DVD player around, or if you still have your VHS player kicking around. But it is an opportunity to be more thoughtful about our personal data and how we can manage that, and think about the companies that we trust, and if we have a dependency on any one company or a dependency on an internet connection to do things in our daily lives. So I think it's a good reminder. But again, it's not time to move to the bunker just yet. I'll tell you when I think it's time to move down to the bunker. So that's the first major story. This is another article, also from CNBC, and it has to do with financial advisors, which I mentioned, and it kind of points out that it thinks financial advisors may not be doing their job in converting the next generation. So this article is talking about how over the next 25 years, this is a study done by Cerulli Associates. It says over the next 25 years, more than $120 trillion in wealth will be passed down to inheritors. So if you're a financial advisor, and let's talk about the financial advisory business first of all. I looked up, there's about a little over 100,000 CFPs. Those are certified financial planners. These are people that got an additional certification to be a financial advisor, and it is the flagship certification to do so. There's a little over 100,000 of them. Now, in America, there are 6 million millionaires that have at least $1 million in liquid assets, right? So this is not just millionaires including the value of their home, which you can't do much with. Most people aren't going to take the value of their home, go to a bank and get a mortgage and in order to extract that value and then go invest it in the market. Some people will. That may scare a lot of folks, so not many people, I'm sure, do that. So this isn't counting the people that are just millionaires when only including the value of their home. These are millionaires that actually have $1 million in stock outside of their home or bonds or whatever investment. It could just even be in cash as well. So if you think about the ratios, you have 100,000 CFPs chasing about 6 million people. And by the way, it's actually more than 100,000 because those are just the advisors with the CFP designation. There's a whole host of advisors that are either working toward the CFP designation or for one reason or another have decided not to get the CFP designation. So the number is actually much larger than 100,000, chasing these 6 million Americans. And I say that because if you don't go after these 6 million Americans, being a financial advisor is a very hard life because you're now going to people that don't have millions of dollars and trying to collect $50,000 from a person, $100,000 from a person to manage the money for them. And you end up having to meet a lot of people in order to build up the assets that you have under management. Say you charge a 1% fee. So if you want to be some star financial advisor with, let's say, you get to $100 million in assets under management, which is very few advisors. Obviously, there's ones that have billionaire clients and whatnot. But say you've collected $100 million in assets under management and you charge 1%, you can make $1 million a year after taxes. Now that's more looking like $500,000 a year. Think about how hard it is to accumulate $100 million in assets from a bunch of people that are only giving you $50,000 or even $250,000 at a time. You have to meet with a lot of people for many, many years. I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be done, but it is extremely difficult. And so many advisors do the math and they say, well, I think if I have to sit down and talk with someone and convince them that I'm the best person to help manage their money and understand their goals and make sure that they're meeting their financial goals, that meeting for someone that's going to give me 50 grand or allow me to invest 50 grand for them, that meeting to sell them probably is going to take about the same amount of time as meeting with someone who would let me invest $2 million for them. Now, obviously the math isn't perfect, right? I don't think the same meeting may convince someone to let you invest $50 million for them. But I'd rather have a bunch of meetings with clients that invest $2 to $5 million with me to get to $100 million of assets under management and more than many, many, many more meetings with people that are giving me 50 grand at a time. So that's I think that's something that a lot of people who aren't as close to the financial services industry don't understand. A lot of people don't have any involvement in the financial services industry until they meet their advisor, and they don't really understand the business and what that advisor is going through. And so anyway, very difficult to be a financial advisor. A lot of advisors chasing a very small group. I know 6 million sounds like a lot of people, but a relatively small group of people, and understand that these people are concentrated in key markets, right? They're obviously spread throughout the country, but there's, for example, there's more millionaires in California, there's more millionaires in Florida, Texas, New York than there are in other states. So if you're a financial advisor in another state, it becomes even more difficult to try and gather many assets under management. In addition to that, if you're an advisor in one of the 4 states that I mentioned, it's also difficult because the competition is going to be steeper because other people realize that's where the money is. So anyway, when an advisor is working with someone and they may help them with estate planning also, or they may connect them with a estate planner that's part of their company. They talk about what the client is going to do with the money, and that's what this article is getting at. And it says only 27% of affluent investors, so they don't exactly define what they're talking about in affluent investors, I think, in this article, but let's just assume it's those 6 million folks that we're talking about, those 6 million households. Only 27% of affluent investors expecting an inheritance plan to keep the wealth advisor who managed those riches, per a new survey. For those who have already received their inheritance, the percentage drops to 20%. So if you think about it, if a wealthy investor is getting toward the end of their life, let's just say their children, right? In most cases, let's just say they're going to leave the money to their children. 27% of the children say, okay, yeah, we're going to stick with that advisor. And most of that doesn't come true. It says 20% is more the reality once the money actually gets passed down to the next generation, to the children. And this article talks about how advisors may not be doing their part to bridge that gap. They may not be talking with their client saying, hey, I should be forming a relationship with your child as well, who's expecting to inherit this money. It's also a weird conversation, right? If you have a client that you manage $10 million for, and they're maybe having some severe health problems, or they're getting very, very old, for you to look at them and say, hey, look, I know your time on this earth is running down. But when you're gone, I still need to eat. So I need to make sure that I'm having conversations with your child as well, so that we can keep this going and I can keep collecting my fee. So that is obviously not how the advisor is going to say it, but that's how it may feel to the client that has worked their whole life, invested their whole life, and piled up a bunch of money that they plan to give. What the article does eventually get to, which I think is a very good point, and the Cerulli Associates also points this out, is that clients are often reluctant to discuss their estate plans with their families. Even among investors with more than $5 million in assets, 20% said they intended for heirs to learn about their wealth after their death. The actual number of procrastinators is likely higher, as 34% of high net worth heirs, right, think about the children getting the money, said they were told these details after their benefactor died. So 34% of inheritors had no idea what the details were. And I get it's an odd conversation, not just between the client and the advisor, but for the client and their child. Money can make people feel weird. So it's not a cut and dry issue. There's many personal relationship factors that come into this. So I don't entirely think it's an advisor's fault for not nurturing the relationship. I don't entirely think it's the client, right, the original parent's fault for not appropriately informing that the money was going to go on. But it can be a weird topic. And you don't know what the state and the family dynamics are, the state of the family dynamics are. And so that plays into all of these statistics. I can say from personal experience, I know when my parents started meeting with a financial advisor, I want to say in high school or maybe even middle school, and they let me sit with them, right? My parents were comfortable with me sitting there and just listening. And it was just exposure. And it was an opportunity to learn. And see how the process worked and start to talk about the financial markets. And I don't think that's a bad approach with my children. That's an approach that I plan to take to start involving them in just from a observer's perspective And I think that's important. I think that's a lot. I think that is a much better approach than, oh, I'm 102, I'm worth $50 million, or even if I'm worth $2 million. And I have two children and they're both responsible, right? Let's remove all the potential dynamics that go with addiction or responsibility or who's got a better paying job or anything like that, or who's better at handling money. And I'm 102 and I have $2 million and I don't say a word to them. And they have no idea if I'm worth nothing or 10 million. And then when I go, they just get money plopped in their lap. I don't think that's the right way to go. That's a personal decision. That's up to you. You all have to make that choice and make that decision when that time comes, and you have something that you think should be shared with someone else, whether it be your children or whoever. But from what we can tell from this article, at least, is that the advisors more often than not, fall out of the picture. And so, in a time of grieving, when you most likely lost a loved one, you're also now embarking on a new journey with financial assets that you didn't expect, which is a pleasant surprise, but maybe you don't have familiarity with handling financial assets. And wouldn't it have been nice to have that conversation? Wouldn't it have been nice to do some prep work? Wouldn't it have been nice to start talking with at least one advisor, or even the advisor that's currently working with who's ever giving the money to you when they pass on. Just something to think about as this relates to our personal life. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to look for new articles and the latest news and try and tie it back to things that we can do in our lives to be more financially secure and try and make sense of the business news that's out there and whether it impacts us or not.